Imagine a world where words have the power to change lives. A world where books are treasures, and stories can bring hope even in the darkest times. Welcome to Nazi Germany, the setting of Markus Zusak's powerful novel, The Book Thief. This is not just any story. It is a story told by an unusual narrator. Death itself. It follows a young girl named Liesel Meminger, who discovers the beauty of books in a time of war, loss, and fear. Through this audiobook, we will journey through Liesel's life, her stolen books, her friendships, and the lessons she learns about love, pain, and survival. This will be a 12-part series, where I will guide you through the book, step by step, in a simple and engaging way. This story begins with a chilling but unique perspective. Death is our narrator. Death is not evil, but rather a quiet observer, moving through the world as people's lives end. It sees everything, and it tells us that this is the story of a young girl named Liesel Meminger. The year is 1939. Nazi Germany is at war. A train is moving through the cold winter landscape. Inside, Liesel, a 9-year-old girl, is traveling with her mother and younger brother to a new home. But something tragic happens. Her little brother dies suddenly on the journey. The train stops, and they bury the boy in the snow. As Liesel stands by her brother's grave, heartbroken and confused, she notices something half buried in the snow. A small black book. Without knowing why, she picks it up and keeps it. This is her first stolen book, The Grave Digger's Handbook, and it will change her life forever. After this, Liesel is taken to a new home, where she will live with foster parents, Hans and Rosa Huberman. She doesn't know it yet, but this is just the beginning of her journey. A journey filled with stolen books, friendships, and survival in a world at war. Liesel arrives in a small town called Malching, where she is taken to her new home on Himmel Street. Her foster parents, Hans and Rosa Huberman, are waiting for her. Hans is a kind and gentle man with silver eyes, while Rosa is strict and rough, often using harsh words. At first, Liesel is scared and confused. She misses her mother and brother, and she does not understand why she has been sent here. She does not know that her mother was forced to give her away because of the dangers in Nazi Germany. Hans Huberman quickly becomes Liesel's comfort. He does not rush her to speak or demand anything from her. Instead, he plays the accordion, a soft and beautiful sound that makes her feel safe. He sits with her at night when she has nightmares about her brother's death. He is patient and kind, and slowly, Liesel begins to trust him. Rosa, on the other hand, is loud and often angry. She calls Liesel names, but deep down, she cares for her in her own way. She washes clothes for rich families to earn money, and she expects Liesel to help. Liesel starts attending school, but there is a problem. She cannot read. The other children make fun of her because she does not know how to spell her own name. She feels ashamed, but she does not give up. She remembers the book she stole at her brother's grave. The Gravedigger's Handbook. She does not understand the words inside, but she keeps it as a memory of her brother. One night, Hans finds the book. Instead of scolding her, he asks if she wants to learn how to read. Liesel nods. So, every night in the basement, Hans teaches her. They go through each letter, each word, again and again. It is not easy, but Hans is patient. He encourages her, and soon, Liesel starts recognizing words. Books become her escape. With each word she learns, she feels stronger. She starts reading to herself, whispering the words at night when she cannot sleep. She realizes that words have power. They can make her feel brave. They can help her remember. And they can take her to different worlds even when she is stuck in a difficult reality. Liesel also makes her first friend, a boy named Rudi Steiner. He is her neighbor, a boy with bright blue eyes and messy yellow hair. He is playful and full of energy. Rudi admires the American athlete Jesse Owens and once covered himself in black paint to look like him. Even though this is dangerous in Nazi Germany, from the start, Rudi likes Liesel. He teases her, calls her the book thief, and always asks for a kiss, which Liesel refuses to give. They become inseparable, running through the streets, playing soccer, and getting into mischief together. As time passes, Liesel's world begins to change. She still does not fully understand what is happening in Germany, but she hears whispers. She sees Nazi flags everywhere. She watches as soldiers march through the town. One day at school, all the children are forced to say, "Heil Hitler." Liesel does not understand why, but she does it because everyone else does. She sees books being burned in a large fire in the town square, and she feels something inside her break. She has just started to love words, and now she sees them being destroyed. One night, unable to stop herself, Liesel does something daring. After the fire is over and the people have left, she sneaks toward the ashes. She looks around, her heart pounding. Then she sees it. A book that has not been completely burned. It is hot, the edges blackened, but the words inside are still readable. Without thinking, she grabs it and hides it under her coat. She has stolen another book, but she is not alone. Someone has seen her. The mayor's wife, Ilse Hermann, watches from a distance. She does not say anything, but soon, Liesel will realize that this woman will play an important role in her life. Liesel clutches the stolen book under her coat as she walks home. Her heart is pounding, and her hands are shaking. She knows she has taken something that does not belong to her, but she also knows she could not leave it behind. That book was meant to be destroyed, and yet it survived, just like her. When she reaches home, she hides the book under her mattress. She does not tell Hans about it right away. She is afraid he might be angry, But Hans is not the kind of man to get angry easily. When he eventually finds it, he simply looks at her and asks if she wants to read it. Liesel nods, and so their lessons continue. Hans does not just teach her letters and words. He teaches her to love stories. He reads with her, helping her sound out difficult words, and when she struggles, he patiently waits. Liesel feels safe with him. She feels like she belongs. Every night, after her nightmares, they sit together and read. Words become her comfort, her escape from the fear that still haunts her. Meanwhile, Liesel keeps spending time with Rudy. He is always full of ideas, always looking for trouble. One of his biggest dreams is to win a race just like Jesse Owens. But in Nazi Germany, admiring a black athlete is not allowed. Rudy does not care. He wants to be fast. He wants to be great. And he wants Liesel to be his best friend. One day, Rudy and Liesel decide to join a group of boys who steal food. Times are hard, and many families do not have enough to eat. These boys take from farmers, sneaking into orchards and running away with apples and potatoes. It is dangerous, but it is also exciting. For Liesel, it is another kind of stealing. Not books, but something just as valuable. But books are what she truly loves. And soon, she finds another way to get them. One day, Rosa sends Liesel to the mayor's house to deliver the laundry. The mayor's wife, Ilse Hermann, is a quiet woman, pale and sad. She barely speaks, but she watches Liesel carefully. One day, after several visits, Ilse invites Liesel inside. She leads her to a large room with high shelves filled with books. Liesel stares in awe. She has never seen so many books in one place. Ilse tells Liesel she can come any time to read. At first, Liesel is careful, stepping inside the library like she is walking into a dream. She runs her fingers along the book spines, breathing in the smell of paper and ink. She picks a book and begins to read. The words flow over her, wrapping her in their magic. But this happiness does not last. One day, the mayor decides to stop using Rosa's laundry service. They can no longer afford it. Liesel is angry. She feels like she is being pushed out of the library, out of the only place where she feels rich with stories. She storms away, but she does not forget the books inside. She begins to steal them. At night, she sneaks into the mayor's house, slipping through the open window. She takes one book at a time, pressing it against her chest as she runs back home. She does not steal for money or for survival. She steals because she loves words, because they make her feel powerful in a world where she has no control. Liesel's life continues like this: school, Rudy, stolen books, and stolen food. But everything is changing. The war is getting worse. More soldiers march through the streets. People whisper about Jews being taken away. Posters of Hitler cover the walls, and everyone is expected to show their loyalty. Then, one night, A stranger arrives at Liesel's doorstep, a man, weak and exhausted, standing in the cold. He is looking for Hans Huberman. Hans brings the man inside without hesitation. He gives him food, a blanket, a place to rest. The man's name is Max Vandenberg, and he is a Jew. From this moment on, everything in Liesel's life will change. Max Vandenberg stands in the doorway, shivering from the cold. He is thin, his face pale, his eyes full of exhaustion. He has been running, hiding, surviving, and now he is here at the Huberman house hoping for safety. Hans does not hesitate. He pulls Max inside and shuts the door. Rosa, usually so loud and harsh, does not say a word. She simply looks at Hans, waiting for his decision. They both know what this means. Hiding a Jew in Nazi Germany is dangerous. If they are caught, they will all be punished. But Hans has made a promise, and he never breaks a promise. Years ago, during World War I, Hans's life was saved by a Jewish man named Erich Vandenberg. Erich was Max's father. After the war, Hans tried to repay his debt by helping Erich's family. But by then, life had already become difficult for Jews in Germany. When Max's mother wrote to Hans, begging for help, he knew he could not turn his back. And now, Max is here alone with nowhere else to go. Liesel watches everything in silence. She does not fully understand what is happening, but she knows that Max is important. She knows that Hans and Rosa are afraid, but they are also determined to help. That night, Max is given a bed in the cold basement. It is the only place where he can stay hidden. There is no heater, no comfort, but Max does not complain. He is grateful to be alive. For days, Max barely speaks. He sleeps for long hours, his body too weak from starvation and exhaustion. Liesel is curious about him. She wonders who he is, where he came from, what kind of life he had before this. Slowly, she starts visiting the basement, sitting near him in silence. She does not ask questions. She simply stays. One day, Max finally speaks. He asks Liesel if she likes to read. She nods. He smiles weakly and tells her that he used to love stories too. From that moment, a quiet friendship begins to grow between them. Max spends his days in hiding, never stepping outside, never seeing the sun. But inside he finds small joys. He and Liesel talk about words, about books, about dreams. Max tells her stories about his childhood, about boxing with his friends in the streets. He imagines himself fighting Hitler in a boxing ring, standing up against all the hate and fear. Liesel listens, fascinated. She starts bringing him small gifts, a feather, a leaf, a candy wrapper. Little things she finds on the street. Max treasures them. He knows Liesel cannot do much, but her kindness makes his days a little brighter. In return, Max gives her something special, a story he writes just for her. One night, Max tears out pages from an old book and paints over them with white paint. Then, with a pencil, he writes his own story, The Standover Man. It is about a lonely man who is always afraid, always running, until one day, he finds a friend who stands over him, protecting him. The friend is Liesel. When he gives her the book, Liesel holds it close, understanding how much it means. She does not say thank you. She does not need to. Max already knows. Meanwhile, outside, the world is growing darker. The war is getting worse. More soldiers march through the streets. The sound of bombs fills the air. People are afraid. Food is running out. The Nazi Party is growing stronger, forcing its way into every home, every life. One day, soldiers come to Himmel Street. They are checking every basement to see if they are suitable for bomb shelters. If they find Max, he will be taken away. And so will the Hubermans. Hans, Rosa, and Liesel wait in fear as the soldiers enter their house. They step into the basement, looking around. Liesel holds her breath. Max hides behind old paint cans, pressed against the wall, not daring to move. The soldiers glance around, measure the space, and then leave. Max is safe, for now. But this is only the beginning. The danger is not over. The war is not over. And soon, everything will change again. After the soldiers leave, the Huberman family lets out a breath of relief. Max is still safe, hidden in the shadows of the basement, but the fear does not leave them. If the soldiers come back, if someone speaks a word about Max, it will all be over. Liesel understands this now more than ever. She knows that the world outside is dangerous, that a single mistake could cost them everything. She is careful with her words, careful with her actions, but she is also angry. Angry at the world, at the war, at the fear that surrounds them. She takes comfort in books, in the stolen words that give her power when everything else feels helpless. But even books cannot keep the war away. One afternoon, Himmel Street is filled with the sound of marching boots. A group of Jews is being paraded through town, forced to walk toward the concentration camp. Their clothes are torn, their faces are hollow, their eyes full of exhaustion. They are starving, beaten, barely able to stand. The townspeople watch in silence, some looking away, others whispering under their breath. Liesel stands on the side of the road, frozen. She does not understand how the world can be so cruel, how people can watch and do nothing. Then, suddenly, she sees him, a man in the line, struggling to walk, his body weak from hunger, his eyes sunken but familiar. Max, he is there, among the prisoners, marching toward an unknown fate. For a moment, everything else disappears. Liesel runs. She does not think, does not hesitate. She pushes through the crowd, breaking past the guards. She calls his name. Max turns. Their eyes meet. He is thinner than before, his face almost unrecognizable. But he smiles, a small broken smile. Liesel reaches for him, wanting to hold on, wanting to stop this from happening. But before she can, a soldier pulls her back and throws her to the ground. "Stay away!" The soldier shouts. Liesel does not listen. She gets up and runs again. She does not care about the danger. She only knows that Max is being taken away. Again, another soldier strikes her. She falls, tasting blood in her mouth. Rudy rushes to her side, pulling her back, holding her down, but she fights, screaming Max's name as he disappears down the road, swallowed by the endless march of prisoners. That night, Liesel does not sleep. She sits in her room, staring at the walls, thinking about Max. Where is he now? Will he survive? Will she ever see him again? The days that follow feel empty. Max is gone. Everything feels different. Even the books she once loved seem meaningless now. But the war does not stop. The air raids continue. The bombs keep falling. The world keeps moving forward, even when she wants it to stand still. Then, one night, everything changes again. The sirens go off, screaming through the air. Liesel and her family rush to the basement. Along with their neighbors, they huddle together, waiting, listening to the distant roar of airplanes. The ground shakes, the walls tremble, then silence. When they finally step outside, they see what the war has done. Himmel Street is in ruins. Houses are destroyed. Smoke fills the sky. And in the middle of it all, Liesel sees something that makes her heart stop. Hans and Rosa, they are lying among the rubble, their bodies still, their faces covered in dust. Liesel runs to them, shaking them, calling their names, but they do not wake up. She screams, she cries, but nothing changes. They are gone. She is alone. In the days that follow, Liesel walks through the wreckage of her life. She picks up a book, the last one she was reading, and clutches it to her chest. She does not know what will happen next. She does not know where she will go. All she knows is that words are all she has left. Liesel walks through the ruins of Himmel Street, her feet moving without direction, her mind lost in the destruction around her. The air is thick with dust and smoke. The houses that once stood tall are now broken piles of wood and stone. The street, once full of voices, is silent. The people she loved, the family who raised her, are gone. She does not cry anymore. There are no tears left. She simply walks, holding her book. The last thing she has, the only thing that survived. As she moves through the wreckage, she finds herself in front of the Steiner house. The roof is gone, the walls are broken, and inside, lying under the remains of his home, is Rudy. Liesel stops. Her heart tightens. She kneels beside him, her hands trembling as she touches his face. He looks peaceful, as if he is only sleeping, but he is not sleeping. She remembers all the times they ran together, the times he challenged her to races, the times he asked for a kiss, always laughing, always full of life. And now there is no laughter, no movement, just silence. Liesel leans in and kisses Rudy on the lips, the kiss he always wanted, the kiss he will never know. She whispers his name, but he does not answer. The world moves around her, people searching through the rubble, looking for the living, carrying away the dead. But Liesel stays there, beside Rudy, holding his hand, unwilling to let go. Eventually, someone pulls her away. She does not resist. She does not fight. There is nothing left to fight for. In the days that follow, Liesel is taken in by Ilse Hermann, the mayor's wife. She is given a place to stay, food to eat, clothes to wear. But she does not speak much. She does not laugh. She does not steal books anymore. The war ends. The bombs stop falling. The soldiers leave. People celebrate in the streets, hugging, crying, singing. But Liesel does not celebrate. The war may be over, but for her, it has already taken everything. She spends her days sitting by the window, staring outside. She thinks about Hans, with his kind eyes and gentle hands. She thinks about Rosa, with her rough voice and hidden warmth. She thinks about Rudy, with his golden hair and stubborn smile. And she thinks about Max. She does not know if he is alive. She does not know if he escaped, if he made it through. But she hopes. Then one day hope becomes real. She is sitting outside when she sees a man walking toward her. He is thin, his clothes are worn, his hair is short and rough. But his eyes are the same. Max, for a moment, she does not move. She does not believe it. She has dreamed of this moment so many times, only to wake up alone. But this is not a dream. She stands up. Max stops in front of her, looking at her, searching her face as if he, too, cannot believe it. Then, slowly, a smile forms on his lips. Liesel does not speak. She does not need to. She runs to him, and they hold each other, neither of them letting go. There are no words for this moment, no sentences to describe what it means, 'cause sometimes words are not needed. Sometimes just knowing that someone is still there is enough. Max is back. For the first time in so long, Liesel feels something like warmth inside her. The world has taken so much from her, her family, her friends, her home. But it has given her this one thing in return, a person she thought she had lost forever. For a while they say nothing, they just stand there holding on to each other. Max is thinner than before. His face is pale, his hands rough and scarred. But he is alive, and that is enough. Liesel takes him inside. Ilse Hermann does not say anything. She only nods and brings them food. Max eats slowly, as if he is not sure the food is real. His body is weak, but his eyes are filled with something Liesel has not seen in a long time. Relief. He tells her what happened after he was taken away. The march through the streets had felt endless. Each step was heavy, painful. The prisoners around him were barely standing. Some collapsed and never got up again. But Max kept walking. He did not know where they were going, only that it would not end well. Then, one night, something unexpected happened. There was an air raid. Bombs fell from the sky. The guards ran for cover, leaving the prisoners behind. Some tried to escape, but many were too weak to move. Max crawled into a ditch, covering himself with dirt, waiting. When the bombing stopped, he opened his eyes. The guards were gone. The other prisoners were scattered, many of them dead. Max did not wait. He ran. He did not know where he was going, only that he could not stop. For days, he hid in abandoned buildings, stealing scraps of food when he could. He moved at night, always afraid, always looking over his shoulder. He had no idea if the war was over, if he would ever see Liesel again. But something kept him going. A thought, a memory, a girl standing in the basement, reading to him, a girl with stolen books and a heart too big for the cruel world around her. And now, after all the running, after all the fear, he is here. Liesel listens to his story, her hands clenched into fists. She wishes she could change what happened. She wishes she could go back and stop him from leaving, stop the war, stop the bombs, but she cannot. All she can do is sit beside him and listen. In the days that follow, Max slowly begins to heal. His body is weak, but his spirit is strong. He and Liesel spend hours together, talking, remembering, sometimes just sitting in silence. The world outside is changing. The war is over. The soldiers are gone. People are trying to rebuild their lives. Some have lost everything. Others pretend they never supported Hitler, never raised their hands to salute. There is guilt in the streets, but there is also relief. Liesel and Max walk through the town one day. Himmel Street is no longer the same. The houses are gone, the people are missing, but the sky is still there. The air still smells of bread and dust. Life continues. Liesel no longer steals books. She does not need to. She has learned that words are not just something to take. They are something to give. She starts writing. At first, it is just small things, a few words, a memory, a thought. But soon, the words come faster. They fill the pages, spilling out of her heart. She writes about Hans and his accordion, about Rosa and her hidden kindness, about Rudy and the races he always lost, about Max and the stories he told in the basement, about war and loss and love, and the way words can save a person when nothing else can. Max reads her pages and smiles. "This is your story," he tells her. "Keep writing." And so she does. Liesel writes every day. She fills page after page, letting the words flow from her heart onto the paper. Sometimes, she writes late into the night, her candle flickering beside her. the silence of the house surrounding her. She does not write just to remember. She writes to understand. She writes about her mother, the woman who left her in the hands of strangers because she had no choice. She remembers the way her mother's hands felt, the sound of her voice, the sadness in her eyes. She wonders if she is still alive somewhere or if the war took her too. She writes about her brother, Werner, the little boy who never made it to Malching. She remembers how cold he was, how he lay still in the train, how she watched the men bury him in the snow. She wonders what he would have been like if he had lived. Would he have learned to read? Would he have played soccer with Rudy? Would he have laughed the way Hans did? She writes about Hans Huberman, the man who became her real father. She remembers the way he played the accordion, the way he sat beside her when she had nightmares, the way he smelled like cigarettes and paint. She remembers the sound of his voice when he taught her to read, the patience in his eyes, the softness in his heart. She thinks about how he went to war, how he came back, only to be taken by a bomb. She misses him every day. She writes about Rosa, the woman with the loud voice and rough hands, the woman who called her Samensch, who always seemed angry, but who loved deeply. She remembers the way Rosa held Hans's accordion after he died, the way she rocked back and forth, whispering his name. She remembers the way Rosa held her the night Himmel Street was destroyed, how she didn't say a word, just held her tight. She writes about Rudy, her best friend, the boy who never got his kiss until it was too late. She remembers the way he always asked for one, the way he ran beside her, the way he stood up for her when Franz Deutscher tried to hurt her. She remembers the time he jumped into the river to save her book, the way he looked at her with those bright blue eyes, full of life. She wonders what he would have become if the war had not taken him. A runner? A soldier? A man who still loved her? She will never know. And she writes about Max, the Jewish man who hid in her basement, who made her feel safe when the world was dangerous. She remembers his drawings, his quiet laughter, the way he whispered stories in the dark. She remembers how they sat together, dreaming of the day the war would end. And now that day has come. Max is here, alive, reading the words she writes, telling her to keep going. The days pass. The war fades into memory. People try to move on, to rebuild what was lost. Liesel and Max walk through Malching, seeing the changes. New houses are being built where the old ones fell. People sweep the streets, open shops, try to pretend the past is behind them. But some things cannot be forgotten. One day, a man comes to Malching. He is looking for survivors, for people who lived on Himmel Street. He asks questions. He takes notes. And when he hears about Liesel, about how she was found holding a book in the rubble, he asks to see it. Liesel hesitates. Her book is not finished. It is messy, full of scribbles and mistakes. But she hands it to him anyway. He reads, and when he finishes, he looks at her with something like wonder. "You have a gift," he says. "These words, they matter." Liesel does not know what to say. She does not write for others. She writes for herself, for the people she lost. But the man smiles and tells her to keep writing. And so, she does. She writes as the seasons change, as the world around her begins to heal. She writes as she grows older, as she moves to a new city, as she finds a life beyond the war. She keeps Max's words in her heart. "This is your story. Keep writing." And she does. For the rest of her life, she writes. Liesel's life continues, but the past never leaves her. Every night, when she closes her eyes, she sees Himmel Street. She sees the broken houses, the dust rising in the air, the bodies lying still under the moonlight. She sees Hans with his accordion, Rosa with her wooden spoon, Rudy standing in the middle of the street, waiting for a race that will never start. But the world moves forward. Malching is no longer a town of war. The soldiers are gone. The air raids have stopped, and the fear that once filled the streets is slowly fading. People try to rebuild what was lost. Some paint their houses, others open their shops again, and a few pretend that nothing ever happened. But Liesel knows the truth. She knows that war is not just about bombs and battles. It is about the people left behind, the ones who must learn to live with what they have seen. Max stays in Malching for a while. He works in a small tailor shop, stitching clothes for people who have little left. He does not speak much about the past. He does not talk about the nights he spent hiding in the basement, the cold hunger that never left his bones, or the long march through the streets when he thought he would die. But sometimes, when he and Liesel sit together, there is silence between them that says everything. Liesel visits him often. She brings him bread from a local bakery the way Hans used to. She tells him stories about her days, about the books she is reading, about the words she is writing. Max listens, his eyes soft, his hands steady. He tells her that words saved him once, that her voice in the basement kept him alive when everything else was lost. One day, Max tells her he is leaving. Liesel does not ask him where he will go. She knows that Max has always been running, even before the war. He tells her that he wants to find what is left of his family. If there is anyone left to find, he does not want to spend the rest of his life in the shadow of the past. When the day comes for him to leave, Liesel walks with him to the train station. She watches him step onto the platform, his suitcase small, his shoulders thin but strong. Before he boards, he turns to her. "Keep living, Liesel," he says, and then he is gone. For a while, Liesel does not know what to do. She stays in Malching, working in a small bookshop. The owner, an old man with kind eyes, lets her read as much as she wants. She spends her days surrounded by books, running her fingers over the spines, feeling the weight of the stories inside. She reads everything she can. Poetry, history, novels, even newspapers. She wants to understand the world, to find meaning in the words that once saved her. But even with books, she feels alone. The people she loved are gone. Hans and Rosa, buried beneath the rubble. Rudy, lost before he could live his life. Max, somewhere far away, searching for a new beginning. Then one day a letter arrives. It is from Ilse Hermann. Ilse invites Liesel to come and stay with her in Munich. She tells her that a bigger world is waiting, that she should not stay trapped in a town filled with ghosts. At first, Liesel hesitates. Malching is the only home she has ever known. But she also knows that she cannot spend her whole life looking back. And so, she leaves. In Munich, she starts fresh. She works in another bookshop, one even bigger than before. She finds a small apartment with a window that lets in the morning sun. She makes new friends, people who do not know her past, who do not ask about Himmel Street or the war. But she never stops writing. Every night, she sits at her desk, filling pages with memories. She writes about the boy who wanted a kiss, about the accordion player who taught her to read, about the loud woman who hid her love behind sharp words, about the Jewish man who painted dreams on the basement walls. Years pass. The war becomes something that people talk about in history books. The world changes, rebuilds, moves on. But Liesel never forgets, and she never stops writing. Liesel lives in Munich for many years. The city is different from Malching, bigger, louder, always moving. But she finds her place among the books. She works in the bookshop, spending her days stacking shelves, dusting covers, and helping customers find the right stories. Sometimes, when the shop is empty, she sits in a quiet corner and reads for hours. She still loves words, the way they shape the world, the way they carry memories. The bookshop owner, an old woman named Frau Keller, takes a liking to Liesel. She is strict but kind, with sharp eyes that miss nothing. She teaches Liesel more about literature, about writers from around the world. She tells her that books are not just stories. They are history, knowledge, a way to keep the past alive. Liesel listens, eager to learn. She feels safe in the bookshop, surrounded by words that remind her of Hans, of Max, of the stolen books that once saved her life. One afternoon, a man walks into the shop. He is tall, with gray hair and tired eyes. He moves slowly, carefully, as if the weight of his past still lingers on his shoulders. When Liesel looks up, her breath catches in her throat. It is Max. For a moment, neither of them speaks. They simply stand there, looking at each other, the years between them heavy and silent. Then Max smiles, a small, careful smile, and Liesel runs to him, throwing her arms around him. He is alive. After all these years, he is here. They sit together for hours, talking about everything and nothing. Max tells her about his journey after the war, how he traveled from town to town, searching for his family. He found no one. The war took them all. He tells her that for a long time, he did not know where to go or what to do. He worked in factories, slept in small rooms, never staying in one place too long. But he always carried Liesel's words with him. He remembered the basement, the quiet nights, the girl who read to him when the world outside was full of danger. Liesel listens, her heart aching for him. She tells him about Munich, about the bookshop, about how she never stopped writing. She tells him that she kept their story alive, that she never forgot him. Max decides to stay in Munich for a while. He finds a small job, renting a room not far from where Liesel lives. They spend time together, walking through the city, sharing meals, remembering the past. Some days are filled with laughter, others with silence. But they are no longer alone. They have each other. As the years pass, Liesel builds a life for herself. She falls in love. She marries a kind man, someone who understands her quiet moments, someone who does not ask too many questions about the past. Together they have children, a family of their own. She fills their home with books, with stories, with the laughter that once seemed lost to her. Max remains a part of her life. He becomes Uncle Max to her children, telling them stories of faraway places, teaching them how to draw the way he once did in the basement. He never forgets the war, the people he lost, but he allows himself to find happiness in small things. In a shared meal, in a quiet afternoon, in the sound of Liesel reading to her children, and Liesel keeps writing. She writes about everything, the war, the people she loved, the way words saved her. She fills notebook after notebook, never stopping, never forgetting. She writes not just for herself, but for those who can no longer tell their own stories. And so, life moves forward. The war fades into memory, but its echoes remain. Liesel grows older, her children grow up, the world changes. But no matter how much time passes, she never lets go of the words that once saved her. She carries them with her. Always, Liesel's life continues, moving through years like pages in a book. The memories of Himmel Street stay with her, but they no longer weigh her down. Instead, they become part of her, a quiet presence in her heart, shaping the way she sees the world. She learns that grief does not fade, but it changes. It becomes something she carries, not as a burden, but as a reminder of love, of loss, of everything that made her who she is. In Munich, she builds a small but meaningful life. She raises her children, teaching them the value of words, the importance of kindness. She tells them stories, not just fairy tales, but real stories about the people who once filled her world. She speaks of Hans, the man who played the accordion with gentle hands and a softer heart. She speaks of Rosa, who loved fiercely, even when her voice was loud and rough. She speaks of Rudy, the boy who always wanted a kiss, the boy who raced against the world but never lost his kindness. And she speaks of Max, the man who hid in a basement, who survived against all odds, who carried dreams and stories even in the darkest times. Max remains a steady presence in her life. He never leaves again. Instead, he stays, growing old alongside Liesel, watching her children grow, filling their home with drawings and quiet wisdom. He never speaks much about his past, but he does not have to. Liesel understands. They both understand what it means to live after loss, to rebuild when everything is gone. Years pass and the world changes. Germany is no longer the place it was during the war. The streets of Munich are filled with new faces, new buildings, new stories. The wounds of the past remain, but people move forward, just as Liesel has. As she grows older, she spends more time writing. It is no longer just a habit, but a purpose. She writes because she has lived through things that must not be forgotten. She writes about Himmel Street, about war, about the way words can save lives. She writes so that the ghosts of her past are not lost to time. One day, she finishes a book. It is not for anyone else. Not yet. It is for her. A collection of everything she remembers, written in careful lines. Each word chosen with love. She holds it in her hands, running her fingers over the pages, feeling the weight of all she has carried. It is her story, but it is also the story of Hans, Rosa, Rudy, and Max. A story of survival, of love, of words that changed her world. She keeps the book tucked away, safe on a shelf, knowing that one day someone will read it, maybe her children, maybe their children, maybe someone she has never met. But she writes it because stories must be told, because people must be remembered, because words, even after death, can still hold life. Max sees the book one afternoon, resting on the table beside a cup of tea. He picks it up, flipping through the pages, his eyes moving over the words. He does not speak for a long time. When he finally looks up, there is something in his expression. Pride, sadness, understanding. "You've told it well," he says. Liesel only nods. Time continues as it always does. The seasons change, the years slip by, and Liesel watches the world shift around her. But no matter how much time passes, she remains the girl who once stole books, the girl who learned to read in a basement, the girl who discovered that words are more powerful than bombs, that they can heal as much as they can destroy. And even as she grows older, even as the world around her moves forward, she never stops believing in the power of stories. Liesel Meminger grows old. Her hair turns gray. Her hands become thin, and her steps slow down. But her mind remains sharp, filled with memories and words. She has lived through war and loss, but she has also lived through love and kindness. She has built a life, one that is ordinary in many ways, yet extraordinary because she survived. She watches her children grow, then her grandchildren. She tells them stories, some real, some imagined. She teaches them to read, just as Hans once taught her, guiding their fingers along the pages, helping them sound out the words. She sees the same excitement in their eyes that she once felt. The thrill of discovering a story, of stepping into another world. But even as time passes, she never forgets Himmel Street. It exists in her mind as clearly as if she were still standing there. She sees the dusty roads, the small houses, the people who once filled them. She sees Hans and Rosa sitting at the kitchen table, the accordion resting beside them. She sees Rudy waiting outside her door, grinning, his blue eyes full of mischief. She sees Max in the basement, writing his stories, painting over old pages to make something new. She remembers everything. Then, one night, in a quiet room filled with books, Liesel goes to sleep and does not wake up. She dies peacefully, her hands resting beside her, her breath slowing until it stops. There is no war this time, no bombs, no pain, just silence, and then a familiar presence. Death comes for her, just as it comes for everyone, but this time it does not come as a thief in the night. It comes gently, almost softly, as if it, too, has been waiting for this moment. Picks up her book, the one she wrote all those years ago, and turns the pages carefully. It has seen many lives, many stories, but Liesel's is different. It is not just a story of death. It is a story of life, of survival, of the power of words. Death carries her soul carefully, respectfully. It remembers her. It remembers the girl who stole books, the girl who stood in the middle of the road and kissed a boy who never got to grow up. It remembers the girl who read to a hidden man in a basement, the girl who held on to words when everything else was taken from her. And as death walks away, carrying Liesel's story, it wonders at the beauty of humans, their strength, their weakness, their kindness, their cruelty. It does not understand them, not fully, but it admires them, and among all the souls it has carried, it knows that Liesel Meminger was one worth remembering. Somewhere, beyond life, beyond time, Liesel is reunited with those she lost. She sees Hans again, his silver eyes warm as he picks up his accordion. She sees Rosa, arms crossed, her voice still sharp but her heart soft. She sees Rudy, grinning at her, waiting for the race that was never finished. And she sees Max. He is there, waiting, his hands no longer rough with struggle, his eyes filled with quiet peace. Liesel smiles. For the first time in a long time, she is home, and her story lives on. That's the end of the story. If you enjoyed the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more exciting tales. Check out our other videos and share your thoughts in the comments. Stay tuned for the next adventure. Thanks for watching.